At the time, we only had about 400 units under management. So we went from maybe 2 or 3 deals to buying an entire portfolio. Well, how do you do that? The same thing as how we started earlier. So we went to an IMN event where George met one of his really good friends that had known since middle school. And he just happened to be an executive vice president of a company that had over 7,000 doors that specialized in buying portfolios.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grenzig. With me, as always, is John Cohen. How are we doing, bud?
We're doing good. We're sending out distributions almost across the board, which is pretty cool.
Nice
to start the year with some distributions. Wrapping up Q4 investor reports, a little delayed, but yeah, we're getting out distributions. So it's always a fun day.
Yeah, nice. I should be getting a nice little check in my bank account soon. Looking forward to that.
Some of us are getting distributions.
Not all of us. For all the grief I've given you over the years, there's a laundry list of things I owe you for. Should I be expecting an invoice?
Yes, you'll be getting an invoice to aid in the distribution.
It'll be credited on there. Distribution, invoice minus distribution. I'm sure it'll be a healthy 6 figures.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I got that to look forward to. So I guess we'll be canceling this podcast then. We'll never be speaking again. And that'll be the end of it. So everybody enjoy the impromptu last episode we'll ever be doing together.
Exactly. I was about to say, you better listen to this episode and enjoy what John is about to say, because it is it.
Yeah, no more. That's it. We're done. Or if maybe we'll start a GoFundMe for John's invoice. That way, if everybody likes it, you can go to the GoFundMe. You can drop some money in. We'll pay John Cohen his fair share of grief I've given him over the years, and we'll keep the podcast going. So that's awesome. But yeah, let's jump into today's episode so I can move past this. Got a really great guest on. Excited to have him on and hear his story. So with that being said, John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me here.
You got it, bud. So we got 2 John, so it's going to be a little bit confusing as we do this, but we'll make it work. But kick us off a little bit. Tell everybody a little bit about you, your background, your journey, and what you're doing.
Yeah, my name is John Okocha. I'm the Vice President of Acquisitions for Elevate Commercial Investment Group. And really just how I got started. Well, actually, just to tell you more about, us and Elevate. So Elevate has over 2,000 doors now currently. When I first started with them, they had 37 doors. And I was the first hire. We're multifamily syndicators who specialize in B and C assets, value add deals. We're in Texas, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and we're looking to close on a deal in Georgia pretty soon. Actually, we have another deal in Houston that we're closing on pretty soon as well. But yeah, pretty much how I got started is, all started when a really good friend of mine gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was in high school at the time. I was 17. And, I met him at some kind of Future Business Leaders of America kind of after school event. And he struck me as somebody that really, had everything going for himself, had everything together. So I, just asked him different questions, and he gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I read the book in 3 days. And I think at that point, I didn't really read that much. I don't know about y'all's experience, but when I was in school, the teachers would force us to read very, very boring books that didn't add any value to life at all. So I didn't really like reading that much. In high school, I was 17. He gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, I read that book in like 3 days. And after that, I started attending real estate seminars. And I went to a seminar called a Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar. And I met my first millionaire. And her name, I remember her name was Janie Connors. She was like on The Apprentice, like Donald Trump and all that. She went from living in RV parks to owning RV parks. And she was worth, I think, about maybe $2 million at the time. And when I saw that, I knew it was possible. So I got a mentor. I started doing some different wholesale deals, went to college. And then when I was in college, I started looking at the side of the investment banking, private equity, wealth management world, and wanted to see if there's a way I can combine the two. So when I graduated, I started off in the financial advising side of things, thinking that would be my way in. But I soon realized that no, I got to stick to real estate and just focus just on real estate. So I started selling investment properties. And then one of my investors that I was selling investment properties to was like, hey, man, like, instead of selling me properties, like, why don't you just buy properties for me? And I was like, like, I'll think about it. And then he was just like, you know what? I'll pay you more than what you're getting paid right now. I was like, okay, I think I'm done thinking about it, right? And then I bought him about maybe 20 properties within like 8 months. I expanded his acquisition department, bought him like 20 properties within 8 months, and about a couple of the deals that I was buying for him actually came from a wholesaler that is one of the partners of Elevate right now. So that's how that relationship started. So we already had a business relationship going forward. I was buying properties from him, and he was selling me properties, and we already liked each other and everything. And they're telling me about. So I decided to leave that company, and they were telling me about an opportunity to work with them. And I told them, like, hey man, like, I never want to see another single family property ever again, like ever again. And they're like, well, we just bought 37 units in Temple, Texas. Would you be interested in jumping on board and basically running our acquisition side? And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. And man, within 30 days, we had an LOI for over 400 units, and, just never looked back.
I love it. I think that's awesome. I think it's a really interesting path, and, you got to see a couple different sides. So I think that's really cool to hear. Mm-hmm. So as you kind of switched over from the single family acquisitions to the multifamily side, was there because I think obviously that's a transition a lot of people make. Was there a large gap for you as you made that transition, or were there a lot of similarities that you kind of pick up and just figure the nuances out as you got your feet underneath you?
Yeah, I would say more of the latter. I mean, they're pretty similar. The only differences are like maybe some of the calculations, calculating cap rates and other things like that. But I mean, it's pretty easy calculations. I mean, you're not doing anything crazy when it comes to calculating different things. You're just, subtracting, adding, multiplying,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Making that transition, and this question will probably lead into a more self-serving question, but how do you take that transition from that single family world to the multifamily world? As Chris said, it's a step that a lot of people want to take. What makes an acquisition guy good, right? Because, taking a company from 37 to over 2,000 doors and being basically the guy that runs the acquisitions, what are you using, or what tips and tricks can you teach people to say, okay, how do you go about finding these deals? And then how do you go about getting your boss or partner to say yes to the property? Because, everyone knows Chris and, the relationship that we have. Chris did acquisitions for us, and I'm sure he could speak to it as well. But from your standpoint, how do you take a company from 37 doors to 2,000? How do you go about finding those deals, and how do you present them to your boss or partner to move forward with the acquisition?
So first and foremost, it's a relationship business. When I first started out, what I was doing is I was calling brokers every single day, getting on everyone's lists and just sifting through different deals until I could find a good deal. And the way I did it at the beginning is I went on LoopNet, and I found that there are, of course, if there's a deal on LoopNet, then it's not a deal, right? But I found that all the brokers that are listing things on LoopNet are people that are active brokers. So I started calling them, and in different markets, I started calling them. And that's actually how I got the first two Oklahoma deals that we got under contract. That's actually how I got them. That's exactly what I did. And continuing on that, and on that footing, just making more and more relationships with brokers, taking brokers out to drinks, finding brokers that you have similarities with, that sort of thing. And also making sure that you're leveraging, if you have any mentors or anything, anybody with a track record, making sure that you're leveraging that. Because at the time we only had 37 units. So if we wanted to find something that was 150 units or 200 units, we would have to leverage the track record of one of our mentors, which was Tim Bratz, and he had over 2,000 doors at the time. So when I would call these brokers, I would tell them like, hey, we have over 2,000 doors, us and our partners, we have over 2,000 doors, and we're looking for more properties. That's something that's extremely powerful when it comes to leveraging. And we also had a combined REO spreadsheet So we would send them a schedule of real estate that listed all of our properties on there, which gave us a lot of credibility.
No, I love that. I think that's a great tip, because someone starting out that has no track record, you gotta, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but you gotta find the story and you gotta tell the story.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say though, quick, I think you got to be careful of, because I was just talking with a broker here, and he was telling me the story about, or stories of people will call him and be like, oh, I was involved in, these couple of deals in the market and we've got X amount of doors and stuff. And he's laughing and he's like, I sold those deals. I have no idea who you are. Why are you telling me this? And it was basically like, it was an LP investor for 50,000, or it was, a co-GP that raised, a couple $100,000. So you have to be very careful and mindful of how you craft your story and what you're saying, because the more gray you get and the more you rely on someone else, you have a greater chance to burn that relationship right off the get-go. So, just because you have a conversation with either one of the Johns and they say, oh yeah, if you ever find me a deal, bring it to me. Don't then pick up the phone and call every broker on LoopNet and say, hey, I work for a company that's bought 4,000 doors. And they're like, oh, what deals did you buy in, Jacksonville, Florida? And they name all the ones that Toro owns. And they're like, we sold 2 of those deals to them. Who the fuck are you? Like, you've got to be careful how you craft that message and what you say, because you can tarnish that reputation and actually set yourself back than if you were a little bit more conservative on what you say. So you just have to, and that does happen. I've seen it. I've spoken to people. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, you weren't involved in that. You weren't like the main player. And that's also okay, right? If you were a minority partner or you were an investor in that deal, you don't have to say I was the main sponsor or I was the main person running the deal. You can say, hey, I was invested in this deal. Now I'm looking for my own stuff. Or, hey, I raised some money for this deal. Now I'm looking to do stuff on my own. You just got to be careful how you craft the message and present it to people.
So
I completely agree. Always tell the truth. Just be straight up and honest. And another thing is, when you're doing that and when you're crafting that story, if you're looking at a market like Dallas, that's pretty cutthroat, it's going to be easy. It's going to be harder to use that leverage in a market like Dallas because everybody knows everybody. So if you're looking like in Oklahoma City, that's not as cutthroat as Dallas, it might be a little bit easier to leverage that as well.
So you guys just stole the words right out of my mouth. When you step into that position as acquisitions, how does the story, what can somebody provide somebody, in your opinion, to help that story? Because you're right. When I say fake it till you make it, I don't mean say that you're the managing partner on 4,000 units. But when I say fake it till you make it, it's what you say, it's not, it's how you say it, right? Because even when I started, I owned a 48 unit and I invested in a 44 unit. And the story was, yes, I'm the managing partner on 48, but I'm also an active investor, passively on 2 other projects. And I think when you start playing in the big leagues, it's not that big of a world. So if you say the wrong thing, you're going to shit on yourself out of the box. So from a standpoint of a mentor-mentee relationship or an employer-employee relationship, what do you think someone like myself could provide someone trying to find deals to help or navigate that water? And then, Chris, I'll ask you the same question because you were in that role and you can say how bad of a boss I was. But John, from your standpoint, how did Elevate help you build that track record? And it wasn't just you going out and pounding the pavement, unless it was, and that's completely fine.
Yeah, I mean, well, when we first started Elevate, we didn't have 37 units, so we leveraged one of our mentors' track records. So that's what we did. We leveraged their track record, and not just that, but when it came to, so there's a portfolio that we bought that brought our numbers up significantly that we bought in 2019, and it was the five property portfolio in Houston, Texas. That was over 1,200 units. And at the time, we only had about 400 units under management. So we went from, maybe 2 or 3 deals to buying an entire portfolio. Well, how do you do that? The same thing as how we started earlier. So we went to an IMN event where George met one of his really good friends that and known since middle school. And he just happened to be an executive vice president of a company that had over 7,000 doors that specialized in buying portfolios. At Elevate, we have our own construction company. We've been doing construction for over 12 years. So that was our value add to them, who had the financial backing, and they had like the track record and other things in order to take down a portfolio like that. So we partnered on that, and we did our part and they did their part. And that's how we were able to get a deal like that. So it's being able to add value to someone who basically seeing a need and being able to fill that need. I think that's number one. Like, even so, like when I got started with Elevate, they needed somebody in acquisitions, and I was that guy. Like, I know how to find deals, so I filled that need.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you got to reverse engineer and just like look at yourself and take stock of what you've done to date. So like very early on, John, when we got started, didn't have a track record. So it was, we invested in the deal that you did, and then we were helping find deals. And again, we had the conversation first, all of us as, partners on these smaller deals in 2016, it was having that conversation, understanding it, being very transparent, and then going out and leveraging, what we had to a certain degree, but obviously more so what you had built up until that point. And it was, basically us stepping in and trying to take work off your plate to then bring deals that would make sense for you, because you were also starting the Toro stuff. Me now in the last year, as I started looking for a deal for myself on the side, even before I was, thinking about, transitioning out of Toro, it was just, it wasn't, I claimed I was, a partner at Toro or I owned 4,000 units. It was, I'd worked on a couple smaller deals as a GP or an investor. I invested in Toro's deals, and, this is what I'd done for the past 4 or 5 years at Toro, running, all the Florida operations, helping out on, the 4,000 units we'd built, all that stuff. And yet, could I have been a little bit more aggressive on how I crafted my story? Of course. But ultimately, I didn't think that it would help anything, because I knew as soon as you start having that conversation, everything I'd built up over the past 5 years in terms of market knowledge, just information, ability to talk shop in general, would shine through quick enough that it wasn't necessary. So when you do start, you do have to, bolster your roster a little bit in one way or another. And, sometimes you have to be a little bit more aggressive in how you craft that message, but just with the understanding that, hey, if you step too far outside of, what you've actually done and what you can do or what you think you can do, you have a higher likelihood of burning yourself, and that can last a lot longer than just one conversation. So, for me, it's two different sides of, trying to figure it out.
I agree. I think, honesty is the best policy, but you got to have your truth or your honesty in the best version, in the best light as possible,
Yes, exactly. It goes back to, when I tell people fake it till you make it, it's fake it till you make it within the confines of the rules, right? You can't bend the rules or change the story. You just got to put I tell people all the time when they're starting to raise money or when they're trying to find deals, before you go out and do it, put the story on paper, read it, and then tweak it, right? One word here or there is a powerful change. Doesn't mean you're lying. You can't go out and lie about it. You just got to craft that story. And that's the message you got to get out to not only your equity, but any acquisitions, any potential acquisitions, whatever it is. You got to get that story down. And that's the one you got to hold on to. And, from my standpoint, sitting in the employer seat or, someone that was an advisor or had an advisor, if I want to say I'm doing acquisitions for Toro and I'm working for Toro, the first thing as I do, I sit down with me or the person in my role and say, hey, is this story okay? And I say, that's what story's okay, in the market. But if you're in Jacksonville, let me make the introduction to the 5 brokers or the 10 brokers. Let me make the introduction. Hey, this is our new acquisitions guy. Run all acquisitions through him. You don't need a story then, because I've already built the history and the track record. It's the new markets where you really got to walk delicately but understand that, operating within the rules is how you're going to go about that. Because at the end of the day, I don't care how good of an acquisitions person or that you are, it's a numbers game. The more people you touch base with, the more people you contact, the more people you get in front of, the more deals you see, the better off you have at a deal being good. So, there are good acquisitions and bad acquisitions, people. I think the major defining line is, are you willing to stay up a little bit longer and wake up a little bit earlier than the guy that's in your role at another company or doing it for himself? And that's the end of the day where acquisition starts and ends, right? Can you convince someone to sell their property for $5 million if they want 10? Probably not. I don't care how good you are. You may be able to do some creative financing to get the price down a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's knowing when to say, okay, on to the next deal, and using the stories that you can build around that is the most important thing. So I think you both touched on that, did a great job. And I think, John, you made it very clear, you got to surround yourself with the right team and then craft that story.
That's the biggest thing, surrounding yourself with good people, good team, people that, share the same vision, people that are headed to the same level that you're trying to head to.
So another thing you got to keep in mind too, you touched it a little bit, is when you're in the acquisitions role, you got to understand who the other people are and what they're looking for. If you're just buying a deal for yourself, you just decide, right? And it's kind of weird moving into that role where now it's like, do I like this deal or not? And I don't have to justify it as much as I have in the past. The more people you have involved, and depending upon that relationship, the better job you have to do at understanding exactly what that person, people, or group is looking for, and then being able to actually bring that to the table. So whether it's you work for somebody as an acquisitions manager, okay, what does the company look for? What types of deals do they want? Or whether it's a partner, having that conversation up front about what types of deals you're going to be working on together. Or if you're, bringing a deal straight to investors, okay, what type of deals are they looking for? What leverage, what returns, what areas, you have to understand what the end person wants who's going to be putting the money into it. Otherwise, you could find the best deal in the world. If it's in a market they don't even have any interest in, well, good chance you're not going to get the deal done, or they're going to be like, did you even listen to what we talked about? Like, that's not a good way to start it either. So you've got to start with, what are you looking to put on paper in front of that person, and then, go out and find it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree.
For sure.
How do you, when you present a deal to, you're running acquisition, when you present a deal that checks off, all right, if I want to buy deals in Texas and you send me a deal in Michigan, I may just say no. But what does that relationship look like? You come across a great deal, you underwrite it, or maybe you have someone underwrite it, I don't know, but how does that, what's the next step? Like, how do you go about presenting that? Because I think a lot of people listening, a lot of people out there, they may work for someone, they may not, but they come across a deal and then they work, they say, okay, how do I bring this to somebody? What does, your sequence of events look like? Or is there a presentation, or how do you go about presenting someone so they understand and they see it how you see it, where it could, I really believe in this deal. How do you, relate that message?
So, I would present it to the managing partners, and I do less and less of this now because, our name is getting bigger, and, there are GPs that will just send us different deals. So I'm starting to focus more on the raising capital side of things, because we have just different deals coming in the pipeline and all that. But when it comes to presenting the deals, so I kind of already know what they want. And it's not super like structured. Well, it's not super structured. I tell them like, okay, like I ran the numbers on this deal. Here's the cash on cash. Here's this. Here's the purchase price. And it's in this area that that we've already decided is the places that we're looking in. It's over 100,000 population. Good job growth, good economic growth, that sort of thing. It's like we've already identified different cities that we want. So it's more of like, okay, well, does it hit the numbers that we want? And it's like, well, kind of, if we can get it at this price, it's like, okay, well, let's put in an LOI at that price,
Yeah. So it's basically a predefined, this is what we're looking for. As long as it fits in this box, we'll make it happen. Has there ever been a situation where you're running into, maybe not so much today than what used to be, more deal flow and not enough equity, or has that situation not really presented itself?
Well, I think that's really just more of a systems kind of thing. More deal flow, more equity. I mean, we're getting more and more deals, and that's part of the reason why I'm on the equity side now, because like we need to start focusing more on equity than deals itself. Because with our marketing and everything, a lot of people know our name. Our name is coming out. So actually, what you just mentioned, right now, it's really just, I'd say, tightening the system. I feel like with our presence, there's a lot of people that want to do business with us right now. It's just tightening those systems and making sure that we can be as efficient as possible.
What are some things that you guys are using, as long as it's not anything that's a super competitive advantage? What are systems that you guys are looking in place to streamline that process and rule out either good partners, good deals, or what does that system look like to you guys right now?
Yeah, well, we're definitely learning as we go. We're using Syndication Pro, which is pretty nice. I actually have a meeting with one of the guys, I believe, on Thursday. So yeah, I'm gonna be meeting with one of the guys from Syndication Pro on Thursday. Just looking at how we can grow and scale the business. I think that platform is a really, really good platform. And just understanding like different click funnels, understanding understanding CRM and when to hit people up and how to hit people up, like different sequences, like how are we doing this, how are we doing that, like knowing how to present different things to investors, and just really putting all of those systems together so that way we can replicate it and we can put anybody in there and they can become successful by using those systems.
Perfect. That makes sense. It's just outlining, basically getting better day after day. That's the only thing you can do.
John, let me ask John Cohen. Let me ask you. When we used to talk about deals, and like I would bring deals to the table, was there anything that I did or didn't do that you thought was good or bad, or like things you wish I would have done, or things that I did do that made the process easier for you?
I think you did a very good job. Obviously, you knew that we were opportunistic. So if there was something that wasn't down the fairway, if it was a decent deal, we were going to figure out a way to get it done. What I loved was, hey, take a look at this initially. What do you think? And it checked off a lot of boxes. Then as we kept digging, we would either uncover it, yes, no, maybe, potentially. I don't think I have any nitpick to what you did wrong or not. I don't think you did anything wrong. I think you did what we asked you to do. Whether the deal was good or not, that's completely out of it. You weren't the one that was signing the check, right? We ended up signing off on anything. So I would say, I think that there's nothing I could point to that said you did incorrect. I think the only thing I could point to, and it's nitpicking, is that I'm not an Excel guy. I'm not a model guy. Mm-hmm. I think the one thing that we could have done better was have a one tool, whether it was a better model or was it a better version of, a first 24-month calendar of renovations. That's the only thing that either you could have built, not that that's what you wanted to do, and or we could have provided to better show how a deal might go from A to Z, as opposed to, we looked a lot annually. We broke it down monthly, but we never really dug into the monthly, which is a major mistake. That was the only thing that I'm nitpicking on. Other than that, I thought the way you went about it was, hey, we're checking out this deal in Jacksonville. It's 230 units and it's a loan assumption. And you didn't bring it to me when it was a finished product. You brought it to me when it was like half pregnant, like, hey, this is becoming an opportunity. Now let's spend some time on it collectively. I personally like that better. If someone brings me a deal, like I got a call while we were on this and said, I have a deal in Tampa. There's a short time frame to get involved. So I just ignored it. There's no point in me getting involved in that. It's a new market. Short window, I don't play well in short windows. So Chris, the way you went about it was, when the window opened up, you made it aware. Prior to that, you didn't waste time with deals that weren't going to come together. And simultaneously, you bring a deal to the table at the 25th hour saying, we have to close on this tomorrow. Well, you did the other day, but that was a totally different story. You didn't bring a deal to the table and say, we have to close in 15 minutes. Let's make it happen, right? We're never going to play nice in that space. So I think the way you went about it was great. You engaged us early enough that it wasn't a waste of time, but simultaneous, understanding that we were going to tweak some of the underwriting together, so it all didn't rely on your shoulder if the deal blew up in our face. We knew that we were pregnant at that point.
Yeah, I think from my side, it was always like a really good, over time too. And it's just something you learn of like, hey, when to engage, when to understand what they're looking for, because, how I look at something and how you look at something, even though we're the same company and probably look at some, things very similarly, sometimes we would look at things differently where it was like, hey, I don't think we can push rent that much, or it's going to take a little bit longer, or, hey, I think we can do it quicker, or, we can push rent, slightly less, but by spending a lot less. Those are the conversations that we would have. And it was also really good to bounce things back and forth, and really, think about it too, right? Talk things out, think things, because sometimes we get in our own head as well, just kind of as you talk things out. So I think that's interesting to hear. John, how about you guys? What do you typically do? Do you typically present like a polished product, like, hey guys, I've done everything and I think we should move on this? And, it's, let's have a conversation at, this is kind of my final underwriting, final understanding. Or do you guys have a similar process of, hey, this deal is interesting, let me tell you quickly about it, what do you think?
I'd say more of the latter. What I would do is I do the preliminary underwriting, and then, I'll send them CoStar reports, that sort of thing. And then I'll tell them like, hey, this is the cash on cash. So I see, it's like, hey, I think we should go for this. Mm-hmm. And then they'll take a look at all the numbers, and they'll take a look at everything and say, well, okay, I think we need to tweak this here. I think we might need to add something here, but hey, I think overall this is good. That's pretty much how it would go. Because we kind of already have an idea of what everyone can already understand what they're looking for. It's just, maybe just another set of eyes on it. Just like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that, my rule of thumb is engage me earlier than later up front. And then as time progresses, when the broker sends you the lead, I don't need to be called, right? When you first start doing acquisitions, hey, we just got this lead, what would you do next, right? That's a valid question for an acquisitions person. But, 2 years later, if, an email comes in with a deal and it's like, hey, what do I do? It's like, well, you're 2 years into this, like at least put something together quickly. But out of the box, you want to get, whether you work for the company or whether you're doing it for somebody else, or you're just doing it to bring it to somebody else, you want to understand the group that you're bringing it to, how they like to go about things. Or if it's internal, you want to understand what they're looking for. So, if a deal comes in and it's just completely not what they want, if you start wasting their time with that 2, 3, 4 years down the road, or 3, 4, 5 deals down the road, you're going to put a black eye on yourself. Because then when someone brings you a deal, it's like, well, there's no opportunity here. What am I going to waste my time doing? So I think from an acquisitions role, early on, you want to work collectively together, so you can establish those rules. And then as time progresses, as long as you're operating within that template, I think that it's fair to say, hey, now let's take a look at this. Let's work together. Do we want to spend $5 a door? Do we want to spend $2 a door? Like, do we have to? Or how much does it cost to put in backsplash, right? Like, those are the questions you want to be asking as you progress, not, hey, do you think we can get a $50 rent increase here? It's like, well, that's sort of what your job is as the acquisition person. You're supposed to say, here are 5 comps, here are 10 comps, we can get 100. Let's model 75 and spend X, right? Not, do you think we can do it? I think those are early questions, not latter, which is something, Chris, you did great, where you would come to us with the specific questions on, what do you think it's going to cost to put a backsplash in here, or stainless steel appliances, which over time changes and stuff like that. So I think that's important for any acquisition role, is to understand that, 2, 3, or 4 together, and then make sure you're only bringing deals to the people that are actually deals for that individual, or for a company, the deals that actually make sense, unless there's something super compelling about it. And it is that opportunistic play, which is not maybe down the fairway, but that your bosses or buyers or whoever that is, they can play in that space.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. I am curious though, John, when you guys had construction in-house, did you get the feeling that you guys would look at deals differently as you were underwriting them and looking to take them down? Like, would you have, did you feel like you had a better handle on what costs were going to be, or did you feel like you can do things for cheaper? Like, do you feel like that helped you with the underwriting and acquisitions at all, or, not necessarily a huge role?
100%. And it also helped with giving LOIs as well. I mean, sometimes we'd even give the broker, like, this is our cost estimate, for this deal. It's like, hey, like this is what we do all day, every day. And I think that it gave us an edge when it came to putting offers in.
Mm-hmm. How, when you guys would take down a deal as well, because I'm always curious about this, would you guys put together a plan for every single unit, like down to the nickel, or would you guys look at it more from like a high level where, when we go through, we kind of say, okay, we know we're roughly going to do these things to the unit and it's going to roughly cost $6,000 a unit, but we know very well that you may come into a unit and it needs drywall repair or a water heater needs to get replaced. So it might add to a little bit, or, maybe it already has vinyl flooring, so we didn't have to do it. So that'll take it down $1,500. Which side of the aisle did you guys kind of fall on?
I'd say when it comes to, I guess when it comes to, it depends on this, whether it's preliminary or, once we're already under contract. But once we're under contract, we look at every single unit. We go through, we look at, but we do it really, really quickly. The software that we use, but we'd look at everything. Like we go into the bathroom, kitchen, and just really quickly, sink, replace it. Like we would have a ranking, medium, like easy, medium, and just horrible. It needs to be replaced. And we'll just go through and just click. Just very, 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 very easy. Be in and out of the unit maybe within 7 minutes, and then have a team of people doing that. So we would look at everything and then have an idea, put all the data together, and have an idea of okay, this is how much it's going to cost to do all of this.
Mm-hmm. Was that some sort of construction software, or is that just like a widely used software that, anybody should consider using?
Yeah, the construction. It's a construction software. I'd have to look it up, but I don't mind sending it over.
Okay. Yeah, because I know there's a company called HappyCo that has like this.
I think that's what it is. Actually.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I know we talked about it because they got a little bit more popular when COVID kind of came out. And I know I was talking with Ben, who's actually doing some refinancing here in Florida, and they are using that software to Zoom call or whatever for the appraisers and Freddie and Fannie. But I also know they have that software in there where you can check off every different things. Like you said, brand new, medium, needs replacing type of thing. And then you can also upload photos and stuff. So I always thought it was interesting. We just never got a deal, I think, by the time we learned about it and considered using it to actually use it. So it's interesting to hear that you guys are using it, because it looked very interesting to me. When we would go through that process, we just had either an iPad or a pen and paper, and we would just, all the same things, but we would just grade it along. But obviously you didn't have the capability to match up the photos with it, and then it would generate a report for each unit. So I thought it was really interesting. I actually wanted to use it for the 16 unit, and then I found out the cost. I was like, that does not make sense. I wish it did, because it's really cool, and I think it would have been very helpful. But it just wasn't built for such small properties, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with the cost, but yeah, definitely we used it for the 800 units that we are working on getting on the contract right now. So, and I believe we use it as well for our Houston portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Makes sense. So what do you guys look for in deals, especially with the construction side, that you think, gives you a competitive advantage, or, gives you deals that make sense for yourself and investors?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of changed over the time, with COVID and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking for probably over 85% occupancy, have some kind of value add there, and around 8% cash on cash, that kind of thing.
Okay. So there's not any, not any things you guys steer away from in terms of building type or building construction or anything of that nature. Are there any bugaboos of things you see and you're we don't want to deal with that because we know it's a nightmare type thing?
I'd say really now it's mainly occupancy. I mean, we'll look at a C and a B property, but I think really it's the occupancy that, typically before COVID, we would look at something that might be 50 or 60% occupied, but now it's okay, it has to be 85% or more.
Is there, I know obviously, right, better occupancy is, more cash flow coming in, but is there a reason you've steered away from the heavier lift, lower occupancy deals?
I think it's really just risk. We'll just feel more comfortable with deals that are higher occupancy, and yeah, like with COVID and everything going on, we just feel more comfortable doing that.
Have you seen an impact in your other deals that you bought that like you're fixing up and trying to lease up, that like you were having slower lease ups or it was taking longer to renovate? Was there anything visceral that drove you away from it, or you've just been more cautious and you're like, hey, we'd rather have something that has better cash flow day one, so if something does happen, we're a little bit less exposed?
I would say more just being more cautious, just being more cautious and being more aware of like what's going on with in different markets, and really understanding and navigating through with the pandemic. I think it's just, we're just trying to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to deals we're putting our investors into. That way we know, because, at the end of the day, like, we work for them, we work for our investors. We make sure that, they're getting paid, and, their college funds are taken care of. And because, most of these investors, they're investing their kids' college funds into these deals. That's what they're doing. Their vacation money, and, so we're just trying to make sure that we take care of them.
Gotcha. I think that makes sense. Is there anything else you guys are changing in either like your business plan or in the people you're looking to work with, outside of just the deals in general, either just as the company's growing or, from COVID?
I would say not in particular when it comes to our partners, but I'd say more particular when it comes to the deal.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I know, as we've spoken to some people, they're being a little bit more selective on, who they choose to partner with and looking at track record, especially now too. I've seen on the lending side, just as I've talked to people, the net worth, liquidity requirements, reserve requirements have all gone up. Putting together Fannie and Freddie deals is a little bit more challenging now, with the reserve requirements and stuff. I also work on smaller stuff where the reserve requirements are higher. If you guys are working on, 10 million plus deals, it's probably not as bad. So
we'll say that we've been looking to, I guess, control more of the deal, be on the, KP on the deal, construction on the deal, and have more of a control on the deal than I'd say in the past, when it comes to doing our deals, to have more of a control on it, because that's ultimately how we're going to protect our investors the best, is controlling the deal.
When you work with other people and you go out and raise money, how do you have that conversation with investors? Do you explain who the partners are and how it works? Do you really just focus on yourselves? How do you have that conversation with investors?
Yeah, so it's very, very important to explain the roles of everybody in the partnership, which is extremely important. So we explain the roles, everybody in the partnership. We explain, where we're coming from, why we're partnering with this person. And just if you have any other questions other than that, because we in our presentations, we try to have the track records of all of our track records of any of the partners in the presentation as well. So we want our investors to be as informed as possible, make a well-informed decision on whether or not they want to invest with us.
Gotcha. And why do you guys choose to work with other partners instead of just doing deals yourself, right? Because if you can, find the same deal and keep 100% of the GP versus, I don't know what you guys, if it's a 50-50 or who knows, is there a reason you guys look to partner with people instead of just doing your own?
I would say just access to bigger deals. If we're able to partner with other people, we can do more deals. Our resources are limited, and if we're able to partner with other people with similar resources, there's more deals, and we don't mind splitting the pie and getting more units and building at a quicker pace. It's easier to scale that way.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I think that's actually a really good place to wrap up, just as we're coming on time. So John, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. It was great to, learn more from you and hear some of your experiences and opinions and stuff. If people want to follow you, check you out, learn more about you, where can they do all that stuff?
A good way to find me would be on Instagram, and that's at Johnny Equity. That's JOHNNYEQUITY. And also if you send me an email and you mention this podcast, I will send you over our due diligence checklist. And you can reach me via email by my email address is John, that's JOHN, at ElevateCIG, that's ELEVATECIG.com.
Awesome. Guys, definitely go take them up on that offer. Go check them out. We'll have those two resources in the show notes as well if you want to see them and you didn't get it, even though he explained it pretty well and spelled it out for you. But it will be there if you need it, if you're anything like me. But thank you, everybody, so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you're not already subscribed, it would mean the world to John Cohen and I if you would do so. And if you are already subscribed, please send it to someone that would get a tremendous amount of value from this episode. John, once again, thank you so much for coming on, bud. This was great.
Thanks for having me.